CAN is the Cambridge Association of Neighborhoods. And the idea when we started, a number of years ago, was to bring the neighborhood together and get to know your neighbors and do neighborly stuff and that kind of stuff. And then COVID came along and that didn't work so well. So we've gone into the information business. With the death of newspapers, it's hard to get facts on what's going on in the city and the county and the planning boards and all the stuff that happens. So we're trying to fill in that gap and provide you all with information and then have meetings with city and county officials so you can ask them questions directly. So as our tradition, to get to know your neighbor, we start off the meetings with a introduction of who you are and where you live. So, Sharon?
Okay. I'm Sharon Smith, and I live on School Street, a couple blocks from the YMCA, and I'm on the board of CAN.
I'm Diane St. Germain, and I'm not Hamburg School.
They live in the house. Then everybody went, wow, what is that?
Like pink spine.
It's a beautiful home.
It's fabulous.
I'm South Hyde, we just moved into Deep Harbor.
Okay.
I'm Andrea Hyde, we just moved into Deep Harbor.
Okay.
Bev Keegan, we live in Deep Harbor also.
Okay.
I'm Burgess Keegan. I'm Vice President of Deep Harbor.
Okay, well, that's nice to know.
Salager, Lower Street.
I live with him,
And you are?
Brother Salager,
Okay.
Greg McNamara, Willis Street.
Melanie Mosher, Willis Street.
And David King, I live in that district. I'm also the Blackwater Rising guy from the community guidance in California.
You're up.
Jerry James, Bueller Street.
Oh, James Bueller Street. Sherry James Bueller Street.
James Winnell Carey, Mill Street.
Okay, now we're gonna have a test at the end of this. You gotta name the person next to you.
My name is Antonio Aguilar. I live on Muir Street.
Okay.
My name is Doug Sheets. I live out in Algonquin on Manitou.
And you are the president?
Yes, I am the president of the Algonquin Manor Association.
All right.
Hi, I'm Roman Jessian. I live at 208 Belvedere Avenue, and I am the vice president of CAN.
Judd Vickers, I live at 206 Belvedere, and I am a board member of CAN.
Sims Rocky, I have business on Reed Street, and I live out on Lincoln Drive.
Okay.
Moira Pitts, and I'm doing none.
I'm King Villarreal, and she's the president of the house.
Smart man.
Helene Harris.
What?
What street?
We're all
Oakley.
Go on over there.
I wasn't sure which.
I'm Chuck Fadley. We're on our second foreclosure. We're rehabbing on Oakley Street. And I've been here about 10
They're
years.
used to living on that boat, and they just float all around.
So,
So they floated into Cambridge, and we're happy for that.
My name is Don Simon. I'm fairly new here, but I'm getting involved in the community, but fundraising for nonprofits and so on. I moved here to live close to my 4-year-old granddaughter in Easton.
All right, good enough.
I'm Ken Smith, I live at Talbot and School.
All right.
Brad Rice, I live on East, can I take a shot? Brad Rice, I live on East Appleby, I'm also a board member again.
Dave Singlestead, West End Avenue.
Joe Chapman, West End Avenue.
Penny Olson, West End Avenue.
Marion McNair, Somerset.
Beth Pine, Somerset Avenue.
I'm Andrea Evans, and I also live on Somerset, but I'm new. I lived there for a year now. not so many. I also look for my grandchildren.
I talked to the captain, Monday night about Somerset and all the tickets that were handed out and warnings. They were doing a test run, I guess, to see how bad the speeding was. And they were handing out, and all of a sudden everybody's, Chuck, what's going on in Somerset? They give me tickets, and they were just warnings, monthly warnings. Only a couple were going really fast. But they said the overall speed wasn't that bad. If 25 is what the speed limit is, and people were going 35, they were given warning. If more than that, they got a ticket. But there wasn't too many more than that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. People in Somerset are upset about the speed there.
Well, I have my car total sitting in front of my house. So my car was sitting, I wasn't in it, somebody totaled it.
Whoa.
They do go, they go very fast in that road.
So,
We missed the people around the
I missed the people around here.
Julian, live in the Wood Duck area.
Julian's our videographer. He's filming this. And you are, sir?
Marcus Jenkins, I live on Parkland.
Okay. And Jim Six and he just walked in. They live on William Street.
And Richard Fairman.
Where did Nicky go? Oh, Nicky.
He's sitting up.
Nicky Berman, 102 Glenburn.
Okay, and then one little fast picture. CAN is a nonprofit. We charge no membership fees. Everything is free in CAN. Everything is free in CAN, but we do take donations if you so desire. And we appreciate anything that you can give, we appreciate it. And
Need a plate for the offer.
I'm Allison Kennedy. I am the secretary of CAN.
so, now we get to the real business of why we're here tonight. And that is to introduce Brian Herman, who's the director of planning, and his able assistant and the rest of the planning department.
Yeah.
Yes.
Get the staff.
Yeah, so, this is the planning department for the city, and, I will let them explain to you what a charrette is, and, we'll go from there.
Okay, yeah, so thank you, Chuck. So I actually live in Deep Harbor right now, but we're renting, my wife and I. But we just bought a condo over on Muir Street, so we're hoping to be moving soon, but not participating in the neighborhood, just we bought the condo. But so just real quickly, I'll just give you a quick summary of myself. I grew up in Rockville, Maryland. I went to school at St. John's down in DC. I went to the College of Charleston. I got 2 degrees, a planning and historic preservation degree, an urban planning, urban design degree. Went to FAU for graduate school, which is down in Florida Atlantic University. Got a degree in urban planning. I worked in Beaufort, South Carolina. Then I went out on my own for a little while, Port Royal, South Carolina, and a couple other cities around there. But I also worked in Bluffton, South Carolina, Thomasville, Georgia, and Crystal River, Florida. I have a son at Clemson who is hopefully going to graduate this semester. And I'm back in Maryland partially because my father is having some health issues, and so we're trying to help with him. And then, anyway, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be back in the city. It's great to be back in the state. And with that, I'll just I'm going to go through this slideshow because I've been told many times that I have too many slides. So I'm just going to go ahead and just get started. If you want to go to the next slide, this is sort of an outline, but I won't go through it. We'll just talk through the items when we get to them. Go ahead and go forward. So the comp plan is obviously the big event that's coming up, and so the last time the city did a comp plan was in 2011. The state required to do it every 10 years, so it should have been doing it in 21. Obviously COVID hit, so they gave us a little bit of relief, but essentially we are a little behind and we are getting ready to start that whole process. And if you want to go to the next one, I'm going to go through everything, I promise.
What is the comp plan?
I'm gonna go through all that, I promise.
Okay.
So here it is right here. So the comp plan is a long-range planning document, and it outlines the community's vision for the future and then the steps that you need to get there. Maryland takes it very seriously. I've worked in some states down south that didn't take it as seriously, and so it was very easy, like, to come in and rezone something. In Maryland, you actually have to prove, like, if you do a rezoning, you have to prove that either the area has changed significantly or that there was a mistake made. And so it's a lot more strict, whereas like down in Florida, you could just come in and say, like, hey, I want this to be Arby's, and it makes sense, and kind of make all these arguments, and they would be rezoned. So the comp plan is very important. It kind of breaks down things in a very logical approach. We start with very big goals. And then we work to objectives and then a series of strategies for how you're going to actually tackle that goal. So it's a very simple overall process. We have hired a firm, and I promise I'll show you all that, but it kind of is going to tackle it from a new urbanist approach. Both Dean and I are, I guess, what's called new urbanists. And the new urban world, in short, I could go on for a long time, but we believe in walkable, mixed-use neighborhoods, and we really try to promote that as opposed to sort of conventional suburban sprawl. So what's out on Route 50 would be conventional suburban sprawl. What you see in downtown would be traditional urban neighborhoods. We believe that that's how you should be developing, and how most of the world developed for hundreds and even thousands of years, and then in the last maybe 70 years, we decided to go in a different pattern, and it hasn't really worked out that great. So if you want to go to the next slide. So these are, on the left side is what the state requires. Those are the elements that the state requires you to have in your comprehensive plan. The top 9 are required by law. So we have to, obviously, land use, municipal growth, sensitive areas, water resources, mobility and transportation, housing, natural resources, community facilities, and fisheries. And then when we put out the contract for the comp plan, we said we wanted to tackle these other 6 items as well. And so it's community design and historic preservation, cultural resources, health, economic development, coastal resilience, and then tactical improvements are just sort of quick and dirty things that you can do from a city point of view that are like, maybe a 6-month project, or kind of what you were talking about earlier, where you come in, or maybe you put like a roundabout in an intersection that clearly has a problem, but you're not sure if it's going to work or not, but you can put like a quick sort of roundabout out of cones and leave it there for 6 months and see if it actually benefits the community. So we're going to have a section on that as well. On the right, I was just trying to show this. This was the comp plan that we did in Thomasville, Georgia. It received a lot of praise, and one of the things we want to do with our comp plan here is make it very graphic. And if you saw the one in Georgia, you'd be shocked at how graphic it is. But so what we did here was we just were trying to show, you have the downtown core, which is a little red sort of area that's outlined in the middle there. We then outlined all of what we call traditional neighborhoods, which sounds like a lot of you all live over northwest quadrant here. That is a very traditional neighborhood. So that would be in that purplish color. And then we also identified sort of centers or nodes for each one of those areas, or for different areas around the city. Areas that might, where the code might say, okay, in this area we can go up to 4 stories, and we could have mixed use, and to promote a little node, a little center. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. You go to the next slide.
And that only is verbal.
Yeah, that's where the circles are, correct. And so this is what we're talking about. Like, this was an old strip center south of town. This is from the comp plan down in Thomasville. And you can see I can tell you that it was abandoned, and it had just been sitting there for over a decade. And if you go to the next slide, so this is what the consulting team drew, kind of how that area could fill in. And you can still see the the commercial building in the back, but how that whole area could fill in and become a node. That was a major, West Jackson was a major street connected to Tallahassee, Florida. And so it just makes sense to do that. And if you want to go to the next slide. So then coming out of the comp plan, and I will go back to the comp plan, but we also want to, well, I shouldn't say that. As part of the comp plan process, there's those big goals that we have to tackle that the state says, those are what you need to tackle, and then we've added on some others. But then we also made a list of things that we felt like were very important for the city. The city has what's called a form-based code in the downtown area. It's definitely a better type of way to do land use planning and coding. What we'd like to do is write a form-based code for the entire city, not just for the downtown. We'd also like to obviously address stormwater, and we're doing that right now to some extent. Better ways of addressing parking, lighting, and signage. We just passed a provision that allows some diversity on the first floor of buildings in downtown. So we're trying to tackle that. Ways to creatively navigate the building code. We are way behind we're in the 2015 building code. I think Maryland is on 22 or 23. So there's been many years that we should have, but we need to update our code basically. And then we have a housing department now in our city, so we want to definitely promote housing. And this is what's called missing middle housing. So a lot of cities, and so I lived in Charleston for a while, like a lot of cities will promote sort of the one end, the single family end, and then they'll promote the condo or the building that's downtown, but there's nothing in between. And so, Charleston's a great example of a city that has all of this missing middle housing. It has duplexes, it has fourplexes, it has courtyard buildings, it has cottage courts, townhouses, multiplexes, all the ones, live work units, and I can show you some of those, but anyway, that's what the city ultimately wants to do and what we should be doing. And most cities around the country are doing that right now. So that's one of the things we want to try to tackle. And then finally, the improvements on the bottom are sort of, I mentioned that we've already been looking at street and intersection design, different alleyways, on-street parking, things that we can do to improve our streets in general. And if you want to go to the next slide. So these are those different building types that I mentioned. They are found all over the city currently, but not in great numbers. And our codes tend to say, hey, if these are not, utilized over a certain period of time, they basically go out of commission. Now, it depends on the building type. Sometimes the building type supersedes that because you can't really just take a triplex that's not a good example, but like a sixplex building and just say like, this is going away. But some of them, we do have, and we are addressing right now. Maybe not the best way, at least the way we're doing it currently. If you want to go to the next slide. So you mentioned, what is the comp plan? So just in terms of who participates, we want our elected and our appointed officials there. We want our city staff, obviously. We want all the residents and citizens. That's the most important thing to get the word out. Our businesses are just as important. We want them. And then our civic organizations. I always say this when I go into the comp plan, it should be something that a 14-year-old, wants to pick up and instead of just put it, and we actually saw this today with the old code that we did in Thomasville. We had someone pick it up and they are actually flipping through it because it has all these pictures and it's very graphic and it's something that's interesting to read. It's not just 600 pages of text. And then I will talk about the charrette. I know you want to know about that in just a second. I'll give you the dates and what we're doing. And so, and then also we obviously want to promote things like neighborhood walks and social media, and there'll be visual preference surveys, et cetera, during the actual charrette, and I'll talk about that. Let's go to the next slide. So this is what typically occurs at the charrette. So this is just, on the opening night, and I will give you the dates and everything, but we typically gather in a big room, and you'll hear from the consulting team, and they'll usually, with phones nowadays, you don't have to have little like clickers and so forth. You can use your phone, but you can you'll see slides and like, do you like A or B better? Do you like C or D or C or D, or do you like, you know, which of these two types of housing, which of these types of streetscape do you like better? You'll have some surveys like that. There's a lot of fun activities that are played and sort of with the folks. And then finally, these maps that you see these folks talking with the microphones are handed out to each table. Usually there's 8 people at a table, and folks will specify like, hey, this is an important area of the town that's not getting any love, or this is an area that we feel should get more attention. And then they'll elect someone from the group to get up at the end, and they'll talk about, you know, we were at table 7, and this is what we felt was most important. And this is actually it's a really great event. You know, I've done it, Dean and I both have done it a number of times, probably 20 times or so over the years, and it's always successful. It always works really well. So that's the opening night, and then and here's actually the schedule. I guess I had my slides out of order, but so Monday night at 447 Race Street is that opening that I was just talking about. We will have some refreshments, not a lot, not like a full dinner or anything, but and it will be at 6 o'clock. Tuesday through Thursday, the group will be at 322 Gay Street. I guess it's the old car.
Is this Monday, coming Monday?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. I think the date is actually after this, I apologize. So yeah, it's this coming Monday. So this whole week here that's shown is basically next week. So Tuesday through Thursday, they'll be at 322 Gay Street. And there's 2 things that are going on there. We'll have specific meetings geared towards like economic development or towards housing. And we do have folks that we've invited to come to those meetings, but you're certainly welcome to attend them. And then, you know, if you have an issue, a lot of times what'll happen during that week is folks will come in and be like, look, I've complained about these 7 potholes on my street for, 3 years and nobody's ever done anything, and I want something done about it. And so it'll get written down during that comprehensive plan period. And I guarantee you the message will get back, and hopefully something will get done. But there's sort of that really big picture sort of meeting process going on, and then there's also an opportunity for the individual to just come in and talk about whatever the issue they have on their mind. Wednesday night, there'll be at 6 o'clock, there'll be a pinup session. As I mentioned, the team that we've chosen is very visual. They have a lot of designers and architects on their team, and they will pin up drawings of what they've heard around the room. And then on Friday, we're going to the Elks Lodge at 618 Pine Street. So that'll be sort of, and I hate to use this word, so it's the closing for the week, but it's certainly not the closing for the whole charrette process. And there'll be a pinup session again. You'll get to see whatever has been discussed and talked about, and then there'll also be a slideshow, or not PowerPoint show, my age, a PowerPoint show, kind of discussing what was heard and what they feel like the direction that we're headed in. And that's on Friday night. And then if you go to the next slide.
What time will it be?
Those are all at 6 p.m. So all of those events are at 6. I guess I'm cut off. I apologize. So 6 p.m. on Monday night, Tuesday through Thursday, you can come in any time during the day, but the Wednesday night pinup is at 6 p.m. and then Friday night at the Elks Lodge is at 6 p.m. as well.
And the Wednesday night event is at the showroom at 322 Gay Street. It's where the team is going to be working the whole week. So come by that evening, and they're gonna show all the stuff that they've been hearing folks talk about up through Wednesday. So it's a good point. It's a good opportunity for you to kind of weigh in and say, hey, there's something that I think is important that I don't see has been expressed yet. So that's a really good opportunity for you to weigh in. What we call it's actually the work in progress meeting, or the work to date meeting is on Friday. That's at the Elks. That's going to be everything they've been hearing all week, but also everything that hasn't been expressed yet. They want to hear feedback.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm just trying to keep moving. So this is our team. I won't go through everybody, but you can see it addressing economic development, architecture, planning, historic preservation, land use law, and there's a bunch of planners. Jason King on the bottom left is the lead consultant for the team, and his wife is on the right, Pamela King. And then if you go to the next slide, so Lane Engineering here, local firm on the Eastern Shore, is part of the team. Wade Walker is one of the best, I guess, transportation and engineers in the country, literally. And so he's part of the team. And then there's a group that's going to deal with what's called crime prevention through environmental design. So currently the city, the way we're addressing crime is we're basically putting cameras up everywhere. The problem with that is, obviously the crime happens and then you go to the camera and you try to figure out who did it and if we can, somehow address the issue. If you can try to prevent the crime through the way you design the environment, then you're way ahead of the game. You don't have to put cameras up. So it's a big movement and actually something that works. So there'll be some consultants here that talk about that. Shane Bourgeois with the Dallas is going to do the economic development portion. And then Zanetta Illustrations, they do a really great job, or he does actually, of illustrating. And so if you go to the next slide. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, and I'll be quick here. So when I was down in Florida, we showed actually, and there's a whole process that you can look into about this, but like just how the value of a downtown parcel. So this is a smokehouse, like a restaurant. It was downtown on our main street. It was the whole lot was just a little bit over a half an acre, and yet the net value per acre, if you looked it up at the county level, you would see that it was worth over $1 million, and the net taxes per year were over $20,000. This is a strip mall down on Highway 19, which is just basically down a little bit further out of town. And this is we called it the Beals strip mall. That was just a big store that was there, but the taxable value is 22 acres. So 22 acres compared to half an acre, and yet the net value per acre on that is only $391,000, or $8,220 per acre. So you can see there's almost about a third of the cost. So the downtown really does have more value. It's definitely beneficial for us to be promoting development in our downtown. Now this was Florida. It's definitely different. I'm sure you can be challenged a little bit, but the general idea is the same. And if you want to go to the next slide, I won't go through the same thing, which just shows the same basic example. And go to the next slide. So Dean and I mentioned that we were new urbanists. So the new urbanism movement was sort of founded in part by this guy, Andre Stuani, and he's still alive and he still runs a firm. But he basically said that the classic American Main Street with its mixed-use buildings right up against the sidewalk is currently illegal in many municipalities. Somewhere along the way, through a series of small and well-intentioned steps, traditional towns became a crime in America. And I mean, that is true. We've seen this in every city we've worked in where we had to come back in and fix our code. And there's William White's a big planner. He talks about sprawl as bad architecture, it's bad economics, 5 acres being made to do the work of 1 acre. And do it very poorly. And then if you go to the next slide, and I just wanted to show this real quick. So that's Atlanta in 1919, a portion of Atlanta, the city of Atlanta on the top. And you can see the building, the blue building highlighted. And that's what that area looks like on the bottom now. It's all just sort of, half the buildings are gone. It's parking lots essentially. And so Steve Mouzon, another big new urbanist, makes the comment that recovery of sprawl to vibrant places is literally our generation's greatest challenge. And I know certainly Dean and I feel like that he is correct in saying that. So that's sort of where I'm going with the rest of the presentation, if you want to go to the next slide. So in the new urbanism movement, we divide places up, and we saw those circles when I showed you Thomasville. Into quarter-mile circles or a quarter-mile radius circle, which is typically it's a 5-minute walk. So if we went right down here to the corner of High Street and Poplar and just drew a circle, this is what we would have. And you can see we'd have a couple churches, the Board of Education, a lot of houses, we have a lot of commercial. It's a pretty diverse area in terms of uses there. And then if you go to the next slide, here's an action. So this is kind of what I just showed you on the top, where you have an integrated community. And then on the bottom, this is the way we've been building over the last 50 to 70 years, where we kind of segregate everything. The school goes out down on the highway, separate from everything else. Everybody has to be bused there. When I went to school, when I was a little kid, I went to elementary school, I walked to my elementary school. And so the top picture, you can walk to the elementary school. The bottom picture, obviously you don't. And then, the apartments are all segregated to one area. The shopping is segregated along the main road. So what we're trying to do is to get back to what's up on the top and do that efficiently. And then if you want to go to the next slide, I'll just go through this real quickly. So you've all seen, obviously, conventional subdivisions, with the driveway in front, and nothing wrong with this, absolutely, but this is not typically what we're talking about when we talk about, a traditional neighborhood. This is more of a conventional neighborhood. And go to the next one. So this is a traditional neighborhood. So Lou Oliver, who actually is the CWDI designer that we're working with, he's down in Atlanta. He did this development down in just outside of Atlanta, and you can see the commercial area downtown. You can see how it has tighter lots, bigger homes that look a lot like what we have all over the city, literally. And so this is what we believe in, and this is the way we believe. And obviously the economics on this community are 20 times what the economics on that first community I showed you are. But it does take a lot more time and a lot more effort by the developer and the development community, to build this. So it's a catch-22 a little bit. And go to the next slide. So this is just showing you, if you look at it from a plan view, on the left is what I just showed you, a traditional neighborhood. You've got 16 entrances into the neighborhood, 16 unique parks, no cul-de-sacs. You have mixed use and commercial buildings, and you have 6 types of residential building, 6 different types of residential building. Then on the far right is what we see sometimes here in Cambridge. People will come in with a subdivision that they're proposing, and it has 8 entrances, which is actually much higher than what we normally see. You'll have 1 major park, maybe if you're lucky. 16 cul-de-sacs, no mixed use, no commercial uses, and you'll have 4 different types of single-family home, but you're not going to have the diversity of building type that you see in a traditional neighborhood. So if you go to the next slide, I already showed you these, so I won't go through that. Go ahead. And then I just want to talk a little bit. I'm going to be fast on this, but you all know, a lot of y'all heard where y'all live, and you live in traditional homes in traditional neighborhood. But you've seen also a lot of the newer development that's been built in the city, and it looks like what's on the right. So there's no reason why we can't put some. We actually have a lot of this language in our code, but it's not law. It just says we suggest this, we suggest this, we suggest this. So we just need to make it law, at least in my opinion, and we end up with buildings that look like what you see on the left instead of what's on the right. If you want to go to the next slide. And these, I'm just going to go through all the different building types. So you have a traditional 2-family or duplex on the left. In this case, you do see the 2 doors, but a lot of times the door is hidden around on one side or in the rear. And then a conventional one on the right. Go to the next one. Same thing with a triplex. The buildings looks like a single-family home. It fits on a single-family lot. Has a front door, a side door, and probably a rear door. Or actually, no, in this case, it's actually downstairs. But in Cambridge, it would probably be in the rear. And you can see on the right. I mean, I did pick unusually bad examples, but that is a triplex on the right. And so,
I thought that was from Cambridge.
Yeah. So go ahead, and then this is a 4-family quadplex on the left, and then obviously this is like the same building development, on the right, and then go to the next. So multifamily residential, in those new urbanist neighborhoods that I mentioned, you'll see a lot of those types of developments or a lot of those types of building types, a lot of those building types and houses on the left. In fact, those are both from new urbanist neighborhoods. The architects, Allison Ramsey architects down in Beaufort, South Carolina. And then on the right is just a conventional sort of multifamily building that you would see if you have a big parking lot in front. Go to the next. So this is actually so when I worked in or when I was in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, this is a very easy thing. Like when I was talking about our codes can fix things easily. So they actually allow on the strip, these are strip centers, these are conventional commercial strip centers, but in Mount Pleasant, they allow you to put parking right up against the building, which you rarely see anymore. You usually see on the right where it's kind of a big parking lot. But you definitely don't usually see buildings parking up against the building. See lots of landscaping. You see the nice sidewalks that, where the street cross or where the crossing of the street. You see street lights that are scaled to a human, not to like a car. And so just good conventional design. Even if we can't do traditional design, so to speak, we can do it a lot better than what we've been doing lately. And if you want to go to the next slide. So this is just two examples of traditional commercial development, where the building's up on the street, it's a Family Dollar of all things on the left, and just a fire station on the right down in Beaufort, South Carolina. I worked on the code for that one on the left, and actually one on the right too. So we can do it. I mean, and these are very nice looking buildings, believe it or not, even though it's a Family Dollar, which sometimes people get really upset about. So go ahead and go to the next one. And then we have traditional mixed use. So on the left side, you see just residential above commercial. That is what traditionally you would have in a neighborhood. On the bottom left is Daniel Island, South Carolina. I used to live actually on that island, and we had commercial development downstairs, and we had residential above, or we had office above, one or the other. And on the right is Mount Pleasant again, South Carolina. And even though it's not great, you still, at least you're dividing. You still have commercial and residential. They're just on opposite sides of the street. So we can choose how we want to get there, but we can still get there at least to this level. And then go to the next slide. So this is open space again. You can do, like a lot of developers will just leave their leftover, whatever's left over, and say this is our open space. We don't want that. That's up on the top left. The middle is a little bit better, but it doesn't have any trees. That's in Florida, so it's not so great. And then on the bottom right, that's also in Florida, actually, in the Orlando area. That's a fantastic civic space. It's on the lake, So again, we have to put these things in the code, but the comp plan is when you kind of convey that information and then it gets put in the code. Go ahead and go forward. So there's a movement called Strong Towns, and I'm just going to show you that on the right, they just say that, so there's a whole movement about, so streets are really about economic activity. When you design a street should be about the economic activity that occurs there. It shouldn't be about moving the car as much. When you design a road, you're designing it for travel and for designing the road, or for moving the car. So that's just basically what this slide is saying. And then go to the next one. They're just showing here again, sort of you got the very open streetscape on the left side, and then on the right side, a tighter streetscape. The idea of creating a street versus a road, or there's also this term called a stroad, but I'll get into that in a minute. And then, again, they're trying to communicate the idea that true streets are all about the tax base that it generates for the city. They're not about moving vehicles. We've sort of flipped that, unfortunately, in America, where it's all about how do we move the cars as fast as we can, and not so much what's on the street and how do we prop that up and make as much money as we can out of that. Go ahead. So I'm just going to show you a bunch of different examples of streets and roads. So these are, it's a traditional rural road. It's obviously about moving the cars, but it's beautiful. And then on the right, a conventional rural road. Go ahead. Neighborhood streets, a lot of the neighborhoods here in the city actually look like what's on the left. A lot of the newer neighborhoods throughout the country, not just the city, but look like what's on the right. It's not a terrible neighborhood. It has sidewalks. It has some street lights. It does have garages in front. So again, we're just trying to get to that next level, so to speak. If you go to the next. So then I'm not going to go through all this, but there's avenues, boulevards. There's all different types of streets, and we really should be going back to what those streets were designed as and meant for. We shouldn't be slapping that name, on like whatever avenue when it's really not an avenue. But if you want to go through this, I won't go through all of these. So go to the next. This is a boulevard. That's a true boulevard on the left. What's been called a boulevard on the right. Go to the next one. Go to the next one. So this is a main street. I used to work in Thomasville, Georgia on the left. That was their downtown main street. And then this is a city in right near Beaufort, South Carolina. But you can see, literally they have guardrails. I mean, that's how unfriendly it is. It's a state highway. Both of those are state highways. So you can do it really well on the left, or you can do it not so well on the right. Again, just trying to show you kind of what can be done. Go ahead and then terminated vistas. This is a very important idea, just to try to terminate your vista with some sort of element that is creative if you can. In this case, it's either, I think it's a church, but anyway, go to the next slide. So I know that there's been a lot of changes in the code since I've been here. I wanted to talk about just a few. So we did go and we did address building height in our sort of where we have economic development, and we increased that height from 50 feet to 70 feet. We had a firm that was coming in specifically. Basically, what they do is they create fires in like buildings. So they have like a building that they constantly are burning, and they try to figure out what the fastest, quickest response time is. But they asked us for the 70 feet. So we've done that. So we have that in our code now. And then go to the next slide. This is, again, in our industrial park. Go ahead, go to the next slide. So this is another one. This is a big one, I know, with everybody. So I just thought I'd throw together some slides here to show you. So we have group homes in our code right now, and that's all we do. We talk about group homes, and that's the only use that we say. So technically, anything else that's not a group home, an assisted living facility, a recovery residence, is not permitted by the city. So just keep that in mind. So what we've done right now, we're waiting. Yeah.
Could you go back over that one?
Yeah, sure. So right now in our land use code, we allow group homes, and it's a permitted use in a lot of zoning districts. We don't allow anything else. So what I've been told is, one of my predecessors was basically lumping all these other uses into the group home use and, approving them. And so they were approved. A lot of them were approved. The problem with that is there's a couple problems, but first and foremost, it wasn't really that there is an actual type of home called a group home, and it's defined. The second problem is that a lot of these uses are actually overseen by the federal government. And so there are some that we can absolutely address, like assisted living facilities, residential care facilities, and nursing care facilities. Those are the three that the city of Cambridge has the right to say yes or no, we don't want this, or we do want this in our zoning district. Pretty much everything else that I'm going to talk about up here is governed by the federal government. And so we really don't have a say in it. And so I know that people get upset about that. I know that it's concerning to me, my wife, everybody, but that is the way it is.
Can you give one example of the person who did a group home that shoved it into a category it shouldn't be? I'm understanding.
Yeah,
I understand these, but what is the group home
What's the
that
definition of
they
group
did?
home?
I don't have the little definition right here of what a group home is, but I mean, I can tell you that down south, on the Beltway there, basically, there's a neighborhood just to the south of that where there's two, now she says they're assisted living facilities. I've been told by others that they're not. It doesn't really matter. They were approved previously. They haven't been any problem. I've spoken with the lady, and I mean, we have one of our zoning commissioners that lives right between them, literally. But the neighborhood does not want them in their neighborhood, but they don't have any regulations for the neighborhood. They don't want to go out and hire an attorney to deal with it. So, yeah. So I will show you in a second. Let's go to the next slide because I have. So these are the uses. So I mentioned that we have two use tables in the city. We have the area inside the downtown and then the area outside. Yeah.
Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but going back, you said that the group homes had not been a problem, but at the same time you said the neighborhoods did not want them.
Right, I wasn't trying to say that they haven't been a problem, I'm trying to say that our code is illegal, basically. The way it's written right now is against what the federal regulations are, and so I guess prior to me getting here, probably a year or so before, the staff started to update the code to write it so that it met all of the federal standards, and we've gotten to the point where we've taken that document, which is what I'm showing right here, before the planning commission. They've approved it, and now it needs to go before city council. It's supposed to go in another month, or it's supposed to go for first reading. We'll see, but it's been a long period of time. And so let me just try to walk through some of those uses real quick, because if I was only speaking about this tonight, I would have come and I would have prepared to talk through all of these uses, but I want to try to address a lot of things. But we can definitely address this. I'm not saying we can't. So under multifamily, there's large group homes and large halfway houses. And there is a specific definition for both. Those are regulated by the federal government. Under the single family residences, there's recovery residences, small group homes, and small halfway houses, again, under the federal government. Under commercial, where we've put assisted living, residential care, and nursing care facilities, those are regulated by the city. So the city has the ability to regulate those and decide whether or not we want them in those. So those are zoning districts. I'm sorry, I should have explained this. Each one of those columns is a different zoning district in the city, and then the seat. So if it's approved, if it's allowed by right, it would have a P. None of those are allowed by right. They all are conditional because there's a series of conditions in the back of the code that apply to each one. And in some cases, they're considered a special exemption or a special use, which means they have to go to the planning commission, and they have to go to the Board of Appeals, and they have to come back to planning commission. But they have to get quite a bit of approval to get approved. And so you can see that the special exceptions are all on those three that I just mentioned: assisted living, residential care, and nursing care, because the city has the right to make that decision. On the other ones, and right now, we're not making any decisions. I haven't approved anything since I've been here, literally. But someone eventually is going to challenge us. I can tell you, either we're going to get sued, or the city's going to pass the new code. It's one or the other, probably, or maybe we'll skirt free forever. I don't know, but I have a feeling one or the other is going to happen, and then we're going to have to do something. And let me try to continue to explain it to you. Go to the next slide. So I mentioned that we have the two zoning districts. This is the downtown area. So we allow, right now, this is what's been proposed and gone through the planning commission, to allow large group homes as a conditional use in the multifamily residence in the core, general, center, and neighborhood districts, to allow recovery residences in a number of those districts, and to allow small group homes and smaller halfway houses. And then again, at the bottom, you see the assisted living, residential care, and nursing care facilities. So again, those three on the bottom, we can regulate. If people come and are furious that, hey, we don't want assisted living facilities in our neighborhood, or we don't want them or residential care facilities, absolutely, the city council can say, scratch those. We don't want to put that in one of those zoning districts. The ones on the top, the ones under multifamily and the ones under single family, I'm just telling you what the federal law is. I'm not telling you my opinion personally or anything else. But right now, that's the way the federal law is written. And so I think that if we were ever challenged by someone, we would lose as a city. But
so is there no limit on the number?
Yep, there's no limit. And so a number of our commissioners, or at least two of them at least, we met with them, and they specifically said, is there any way we can put in like a distance ratio, like relationship where, if we have one here, you have to be at least a quarter mile away or a half a mile away or whatever, number of blocks or something. And we sent that off to our attorney, and our attorney has said no, that there's no restrictions right now that we can't regulate. I know that drives people nuts. It drives me nuts too, but I just, that's the way it is. So that's what we've been told, and certainly you're welcome to come out and express your views. But Yeah, so that's where we're at right now. It's a tough issue, unfortunately. That's why I feel like you gotta get to like a Charleston or a Savannah where you're raising the overall value. Because usually what these folks do, and I'm sorry for, I'm probably being wrong by doing this, but they tend to look for areas where they can buy a big home, like a big grand mansion for a relatively cheap rate, and then they move in. And so right now, Cambridge fits those dynamics, and so they've been doing that, or they've been looking at least. I'll give it to you in just a second. And so if we can get to a point where those homes are no longer, you know, valuable or equitable, or they can be made into whatever they want to do, then, you know, they won't come here. I guarantee you, they don't come to Charleston. They don't come to, you know, Beaufort, South Carolina, because they've been outpriced by the market. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, when it says C permitted subject to conditions, do we know what those conditions are? And I also wanted to say that I am very concerned because I grew up in this town and there are a lot of big homes. As an example, some of the ones on High Street used to be apartments, and it used to be that if any of those homes were sold, they had to go back to single family homes, and that changed somewhere along the way. And I already have a boarding house in my neighborhood. So I'm very concerned about what does permitted mean and what are the conditions.
Right,
I
so,
mean, I know one of the things that we can't talk about right now is how close these places can be. But absentee landlords, parking, particularly on my street, is very difficult
yeah, I agree with everything you're saying.
and it's
So,
upsetting.
yeah, so I know, I've dealt with a little bit of this, not a lot since I've been here, but, yeah, so at some point there was a rule put in place that basically, I think you have 90 days, or I don't know, is it 90 days? Yeah. So you have 90 days, essentially, if one of these, like, say, triplex, well, for lack of a better term, I'll just call it a triplex, but where they have 3 living units in one single family home, if the person moves out and for whatever reason, 90 days goes by, it does have to revert back to single family, like you said, the use should do that. And there's not
And that is currently in this town?
Yes, that's the current rules right now. So we had a case not too long ago where, and I mean, you could definitely argue with us, and I'm not saying that we are 100% perfect by any means, but the city won the case in front of the Board of Appeals, but it was a challenging case, and it was essentially the issue was, did 90 days go by or did it not go by? And you know, and so anyway, I don't, you know, I can't get into the specifics of that case, but I think over time, some of those will go away. I'm not saying that they all will, but this is a different issue. I mean, because this is basically saying that I can come in, if I have the money and the capability to run a recovery residence or whatever, I can come in and buy a home and essentially open it up, and there's nothing, and right now, the current code doesn't allow it, so you could stop it, but if the code was changed to meet what the federal and state laws actually are, you couldn't stop it. Now, the alternative to that would be I could sue the city right now and say, well, your code hasn't been brought up to date. And so that's sort of the
So hopefully we're working on trying to get that remedy so that someone out of state doesn't come in and buy one of our homes and bring people in from other communities, not servicing our community, which there's a great need.
Right.
And then being an absentee landlord. How are we going to protect against that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's a big concern.
Yeah, I understand the issues, and I'm not saying that I'm an expert on it by any means, but I do know enough about it to say that right now we're kind of in a position where we either pass the current ordinance and try to work hard, because I will tell you that, you know, I've watched these folks over the years, and I've actually written a number of zoning codes and things, and they tend not to go, there's sort of a cutoff point, you know, financially, where they can afford to get these big old mansions and they can stick people in on them, and they're not necessarily the best.
It's limited by funding, right? They get funding from a service, and there's a limit to what's paid to them to fund the rehab.
Correct. I don't know the
It
whole.
really does control it.
Yeah, I don't know the whole scheme, but I'm guessing there's some sort of a way to get funding and then buy the home. And yeah, so I'm not trying to say that, so anyway, it's an issue. We definitely, there's kind of two possible solutions. We can continue to wait it out and see what happens. If we may never get sued, I don't know, but like, I think that we're in a very vulnerable situation, just having talked to our attorney. But that doesn't mean that our council is willing to make that change, and they may not be willing to. So,
You can see by the summer paintings, this is a big issue.
Quick question, can you just bump back to that last slide?
Yeah, sure.
So the question I have, so the large group home, that's 9 or greater, is that correct? Or is it?
Yeah, I think you're correct.
And the small group home would be permitted or is permitted by federal law in single-family neighborhoods of 8 or less, or 9 or less, something like that?
Yeah, I think you're correct.
So my question is, by saying multifamily residences could be a large group home, are we setting ourselves up in our single-family neighborhoods where you have a non-conforming apartment house that then could slip in and say, we can have a large group home there because that particular house is a multifamily resident? Or would you want to consider breaking that down further to say any neighborhood that's zoned as single family, it has to be a small group home or smaller? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, is somebody going to wiggle in and say 205 Oakley is a multifamily resident, it can now be a large group home with 9 or greater? You know what I'm saying?
This is probably.
I'm just saying, could there be an unintended consequence there of making that change?
Yeah.
Something to think about.
No, I don't disagree, and so this, you're right. I mean, everything you said is true. That I don't know the exact home that you're talking about. If it's a multifamily like apartment complex, so to speak.
It's our infamous one on Oakley Street.
Okay.
The one that we took to the board.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Well,
And everything around is single family, but now it's a multifamily. So would that be now eligible for a large group home?
I don't disagree with you. There are some issues like parking and things like that. That I feel like I don't know how that all played out, years ago when that use was allowed.
This is probably the better table to look at. So if you look at the R column, like the residential district.
Okay.
Right now, what's struck out in red, that's the way the code currently is worded. And it's just big grab bag called group home. But what was added was large group home, halfway house.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It would no longer be permitted by residents.
Okay. Got it.
And then it would just be small group home, halfway house, recovery residents. Those would be conditionally allowed with conditions.
Okay.
And then assisted living facility, residential care facility, nursing care facility. This is what we would normally think of as assisted living, it's for the aged or for the infirm. That would be a special exception subject to condition.
So we would have the ability to then limit it in the residential neighborhoods to no greater than who could live in a single family home, essentially.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's weird that, because we list it as conditional, but, ultimately if the federal governments or, the state and federal government are overseeing whether or not the use is allowed, I don't know what the conditions.
So I do know a little bit about this because so one of the advantages of working 30-some years, at some point you're on one side or the other of that, arguing in front of some city council. What started this discussion at the federal level was the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So if there was a company that was providing a residence that was, let's say it's a dry residence, it's a drug-free, alcohol-free residence, that was deemed an actual medical treatment facility. If someone was pre-diagnosed with that federally recognized disability, that they were a recovering alcoholic or they were a recovering addict. So if they could find a facility that didn't permit that and was managed in a way that it didn't allow drugs or alcohol, that was considered a federally recognized assistance for that disability. And so cities were told by this federal, by a federal court decision, and I think they were referred to as Oxford Homes, could not subject those facilities to any more standards than that city subjects just a regular residence. So if a regular residence was permitted, then the city had no means, no way to regulate or define where to go or not go. So cities started diversifying their code in order to address that. And so they would create special zone districts populated. But that presents a whole bunch of other challenges like spot zoning, which is also illegal.
Well, and I appreciate that explanation, Dean, but the leaky part of that is how many of our single-family homes have nine people in them up and down the street, right? I mean, so that's where the impact is, where you just have a large number of folks in one house. And I think I would echo what James said, which is I think we need to help our own folks that need help. But when your community is becoming a target, and I think you picked up on this point too, Brian, when your community is becoming a target because it's cheap and inexpensive, and they bounce past Easton and they bounce past Queen Anne's County, and they're coming to Federalsburg, Salisbury, and Cambridge.
And not by coincidence, the operators of those facilities are not the kind of operators that are having 24/7 staff, trained, certified, supportive staff. They're looking for really the lowest hanging fruit for them to be able to go in, and they're hoping they can get into a jurisdiction that just is like, well, we don't know what to do.
So do folks really have the opportunity to recover, right? And that's part of the challenge.
Correct. Because it's the really good, the really well-run facilities actually provide those true transitional services to allow people to fully recover and become kind of contributing members of society. Bad operators. And so you have to have your regulations up to snuff, and that's where I think the city is heading in. I was really happy that the city had gone through this, that it already presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that it unanimously recommended that this version be adopted. And but we can't dictate to city council what city council wants on their agenda to vote. So it's incumbent upon the citizenry to step forward and say, look, you've had this recommendation to adopt this new standard that brings it into alignment with federal law and protects neighborhoods. You need to get it on your agenda and take action on it. Vote it up, vote it down, doesn't matter, but get it on your agenda.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the one challenge has been, and where my fear was when this was first introduced, was that we had the city council really, instead of the planning commission, passed an ordinance a number of years ago to permit Airbnbs throughout the city.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it wasn't accompanied by a plan of how to regulate that. So everyone just took it as, well, everybody can just have an Airbnb. I still don't think the city is collecting any of the lodging fees for Airbnbs. So my same fear is that this is great, but if there's not the enforcement in the back end or the ability to enforce it, everybody's going to say, oh, well, this is permitted everywhere in Cambridge, and they'll just start doing it. And the city won't be able to keep up with it or monitor it if there's not a plan in place to license, or not license it, because we don't have to do that, but at least enforce it.
No, that's
That's my concern, is that just that backup plan on how it's going to be enforced on the back end.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there were a couple.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to monopolize, sorry.
Did you have your hand up, or did you not want to, did you want to speak, or you had your hand up, did you want to speak?
For me?
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
just pointing these two people out.
Oh, okay,
I
I'm
didn't wanna
sorry.
ask a
Oh,
question.
okay, go ahead.
And you didn't call him.
Well, he was talking, that's why.
We, in the last few minutes, started talking about what I wanted to ask about, but let me go forward anyway. It seems to me it's not the fact that there's a recovery house. There's a fact that there's a very badly managed recovery house. And so the question is, can our conditions include conditions about how they're managed and a method to monitor how they're managed?
Yeah, I believe they can. Probably everybody knows Holly was an employee of the planning department, and she was very adamant that we couldn't go in, we could never do anything basically to touch those there's units, and I don't agree with that. I've been in other cities where we absolutely went and checked them out, and code enforcement went in. We wanted to make sure that, and I know that you can argue that it's a federal issue, but the city can then also come back and say, and I mean, the federal government isn't gonna like come in and arrest the city council or something. If the city comes in and says like, hey, this isn't running the way it's supposed to be, contacts the federal government, and then, but ultimately, well, yeah, actually, no. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But technically, I mean, you're right that the federal government would, the problem is we then have to contact the federal government, they have to send someone over and basically what we're saying. You're right, that is the big issue. Ultimately, is can the city get enough power and support?
Typically, cities do not arbitrate as third parties to independent contracts. So if there's an operator that has a contract with a state agency, we're not going to intervene as a third party because we're not a member of that contract. But those places are rentals, and we have passed a rental registry. And part of that registry also allows the city to go in and do internal inspections, not just what's happening on the exterior, but go in and see, are these spaces up to do they meet the basic human decency standards? And because there's a number of properties, and I know the concern here is mostly these group homes, but there's a lot of other properties in the city here that are being rented right now that have plumbing that doesn't work, that have dirt floors.
Yeah.
And if we go in and we actually, and what the city has done in the past is like what a lot of cities used to do, is we would move in and we would move in to condemn the property, and the property just goes back on the tax rolls, and it's sold at the next tax auction, and the next scofflaw landlord goes in and just picks it up for a song and runs it. So the city has taken the tough decision. This is direct from the Director of Economic Development. No, if we're going to go in and condemn the property, we're going to tear the property down because it doesn't meet basic building code standards, and the current operator is not pledging to bring it up to code. We're going to tear it down, and we're going to redevelop that property using the new land bank to build decent, cost-effective, affordable housing.
She's next.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hello, hi. So, I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking of the rapidly changing federal government. I mean, I hate to bring that up, but we need to think about that. Things that are being transferred to each state as opposed to the federal government. The state is no longer accepting applications for these programs right now. I mean, they've stopped. They're not accepting applications for group homes, I think. I read that. I'm not sure if that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I had someone last night who chased me out of the council chambers, basically, that when are we gonna get this law passed, because she has to.
It needs to happen quickly because we need to button this up, because as things become, I mean, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but as things become dependent on each state, this problem could get really out of hand. With people coming into Cambridge, taking these beautiful old houses apart, taking them apart and putting crap in, and moving transient people in every 28 days or whatever. Now, I have nothing against recovery programs, but they don't belong in areas where we're trying to create neighborhoods.
I think what was said about the law, the enforcement is the key thing with the city, is we've got to be able to enforce, the law, basically.
And I would go one step further and say a well-run recovery program can be a wonderful asset in a neighborhood. But it has to be well-run. And so that's kind of where, this is like one hair on the tail of that particular dragon, just that relates to land use. So we're gonna get this part, we wanna get this part fixed, but there's still the dragon that has to be, the tiger that's gotta be wrestled. And I think that this is a direction. This is a move in the right direction. But a lot of it comes back to the comprehensive plan. I want to bring this back to the comprehensive plan discussion. We can't write code in a vacuum. The Unified Development Code, the only thing that sits in the Unified Development Code is something that enforces and enacts policies that are in the comprehensive plan. So if these are issues, if there's issues that you feel are not being addressed, it has to show up in the comprehensive plan as a policy statement. Then we can write a code to it. And I think the prior planning department was struggling because you go through the current comprehensive plan, there's very little language in there about how to deal with this minutia. So this is the opportunity to go back through the comprehensive plan process and say, no, this is important to us because we're an at-risk community that, no fault of our own, we're prey to kind of predatory lending practices, predatory mortgage practices, predatory, social services practices, was like bad actors. Let's try to build those policies in place, and then we can actually write code that enacts that policy.
And along the
And
lines
can
of
I
what,
follow up real quickly?
Sure.
Is this program that you're putting together, is this just for the people that live and work in the city, or is it for everybody in the county, or is it?
yeah, this is the city's zoning code. So what's been proposed is basically a text amendment that would change the current zoning code for the city, so citywide, anywhere in the city boundaries.
So participants are city residents?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what Dean said, if you talk, and I'm sure that the folks that are gonna be overseeing the comp plan, the outside consultants, they've worked all over the country. If anyone knows about, maybe there's a way that, maybe there is something creative that we can do, I don't know. So, I think it's a good point that, that they're gonna all be here next week. This is the time to see, because, there might be a way to address this that we don't know about. So yeah, I'm sorry.
I think these are all really great questions, and it sounds like something that would be good topics for the charrettes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm just wondering if we can move on.
Okay, sure.
So-
Yeah, I don't know.
So one last question, just to clarify about commenting on the comprehensive plan. We should get this specific in it, is what you're saying. Like, if we want the 90-day rule to continue, we should comment on that in the charrettes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've seen many, especially that opening night,
Okay.
I've seen many things that you might think are, oh my gosh, that's sort of strange, but then it ends up in the comp plan, so.
So it's okay to get detailed with
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
Okay.
Sorry, just
I
last.
just have one more question. We're gonna be away next week. Sadly, I can't be here for any of that. Well, can get notice out on that somehow. Those meetings and those.
This is just the front, this room is just the front.
Or would any of the meeting agenda overview be shared?
No, I don't think the actual events are recorded, but I don't know, that opening ceremony, that opening
I was
event might
just curious.
it might be recorded, but I will tell you flat out, just so you know that this is just, I know it sounds like it's the whole caboodle, but it's not. We go on at least until October where we're still, taking comment and trying to figure out how we're balancing different issues and so forth. So there's plenty of time to give input if you're not here, if that's the case. Sure, go ahead.
Just curious, back maybe bigger picture here. You talked about sprawl, how to contain that in towns. This town proper, the beautiful historic nature to it. Everybody wants to cherish and keep, I'm sure. But then we have Route 50, right?
Right.
Anything in the comprehensive plan to address that and regulations for zoning, how that's hardened or
Yeah, I'm gonna talk.
separated from the town center or integrated with,
Yeah.
or
I'm going to talk about one item that we've already started doing, and then I talked to some of our commissioners about going to the next step, and they said, let's wait till the comp plan to kind of see that through. So, but absolutely, everything you said is absolutely something that I think should be addressed in the comp plan. We should try to, I was showing those beautiful state roads in other cities, that there's no reason why we can't have that here. And so, Yeah, so I agree
That's
with
the
you.
town in half too, I mean, there's stuff on the other side.
Yeah.
No, I
that's-
use it, but it's kind of awkward to get some stuff.
I gotta second what this lady said, this is probably a good subject for the charrettes next week.
Okay, so, is this the next slide or?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go through these real fast. So we did deal with, I know this is probably not, but it actually is a big issue for the state. Solar energy is a big issue at the state level. And so we did write some language, to our text that basically allows for a community solar, system, so to speak. There's 4 different types of community solar, or types of solar system, but on a lot with trees. And so that was one amendment. I'm gonna go fast through these, go ahead. This is actually being built right, if you know where the city is over on, this is on,
Leonard's Lane.
yeah, yes, thank you. Terrible. On Leonard's Lane right now, and so it is a wooded lot, but it met, because of what we wrote in that previous code, it is allowed, it's basically a solar field that'll be hidden behind a massive tree buffer. Go ahead. I'm not gonna go into all this, but I will just say one thing, because you mentioned it. So Route 50, the city took the first step, which we used to have a 50-foot setback on Route 50. So like we have a new Zaxby's that's being built. That's a chicken chain out of the south. They are gonna be 50 feet back from the front of the lot just because of the code. So a couple months ago, we passed a language that said that's no longer in effect. You can now come up and the front setback's 15 feet. What I'd like to do is kind of what you're talking about is to require that the front of the building has to be no more than like, say, 25 feet back or no more than 20, whatever, 15 feet, whatever it is. But instead of just saying it can be a minimum of 15, but could still go back 50 feet, actually set a minimum essentially. And so, but anyway, yeah, and so you can see, I showed like, I used to live down in Florida and US 19, if you look at that road on the bottom right, it's got sidewalks, it's got a buffer strip, it's got turning lanes, it's got a bike lane, it's got, but it's got 3 lanes of fast moving traffic. And so it was actually the deadliest stretch of road in America for a while. So the problem is if you just say like, oh, we're gonna put all these elements in, but then we're gonna allow a lot of cars to move really fast, it doesn't do any good. It's ultimately, you gotta slow the traffic down and say, hey, this street is about commerce more so than about moving traffic when we're in the downtown. So go ahead, I'm gonna skip through all these. Go ahead to the next one. Just again, I showed kind of what a road is versus a street. Go ahead. So you can, just real quickly, I'll just say, because you mentioned Route 50, a lot of cities have done what's called a road diet, where they come back and they basically turn what has turned into either a major thoroughfare back into a street. And here's a few examples that I'll highlight in the red boxes. Actually, the one on the top left isn't, but the 3 others are where they've created kind of more of a downtown setting out of their major thoroughfare, and they've been successful. Go to the next slide. And this is what I was talking about, that 15-foot setback right now on Route 50. We took out that line at the very top that said everything has to come back 50 feet. Go to the next slide. I just wanted to show this real quick because it bugs me tremendously. So these are all drive-throughs, and these are in Tallahassee, Florida. So they have done the same thing basically to what we just did on Route 50. They've said that the development has to come up to the state road. And you can see that the way the drive-throughs are handled, they're in the back of the building. Because a lot of times the engineers will tell you, oh, there's no way that can be done. If there's just can't be done. And like, it can be done. It absolutely can be done. That's a Chick-fil-A on the left. I've actually been to all 3 of these fast food places, so that it works. And then go to the next slide. And this is in Beaufort. Little Beaufort, South Carolina did it too. That's a McDonald's, a 2-story McDonald's on the left there. And you can see the drive-through, how it works. And so it's behind the building fronts on the state highway in the front. And eventually there's going to be a new road cut through there. But anyway, go to the next slide. So this is one of the things I'm actually proud of that we did. We passed a zoning amendment to allow this bank. We gave them it's going to be wherever the Dairy Queen is or was. So And it's gonna look like that, and it's not gonna have parking in front. It's gonna be a nice little plaza in front. And so, I think we're starting to see good development on Route 50, hopefully. And that's what we started to do, at least with this. Go ahead. So this is that Zaxby's. Unfortunately, it's got a really good design, but it's sitting back 50 feet. So we'll see how it turns out. Go ahead. There's 3, I think, slides on here. Go ahead. Okay, so this is the waterfront. You know, a lot of y'all are curious, I think, about the CWDI project. This is sort of the latest and greatest zoning proposal for it. We're working on a form-based code, what we have in the downtown for this. And I mentioned, you know, Lou Oliver, and there's also a really great transportation engineer involved. So I do think we have good people that are really trying to do the right thing involved in the project. Ultimately, the question is, we're a city of 15,000 people. How do we, you know, are we gonna just double overnight, or is it gonna be a slow increase, or how is that area gonna develop out? But we're still working on that, obviously, but this is just the overall master plan right now. Go ahead. So I'm gonna go through these quick. Just the city is addressing stormwater and the critical area. We have a few areas where the city annexed some land, and as a result of that, we actually do have areas that are amenable or that have to deal with the critical area, and that's a code that's going to have to be passed eventually. Go ahead. So if you know, the living shoreline, Larry White has been, you know, dealing with that issue, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I'm sure you've seen it, but you know, basically there will be a 4-foot high buffer, sort of, or I don't know what the right word is, but you know, all the way around the waterfront. So in theory, you know, if a 100-year storm hits, or you know, it will repel that water, and so it's a very good thing.
I thought you lost the funding.
Yeah.
Well, no, we haven't lost it. So we're still doing the designing and everything. We're basically, Larry is under the impression that eventually it will be re-released, and so the whole group is still together. We still meet. We still go over all the designs. So I think it'll still come through. It's just that, you know, you're right. Technically it's been pulled, but he feels like it's still going to come back. So go ahead. I'm sorry. So I'm not going to. So you can just see on the right there. That's what the flooding looks like if we have a big storm. You know, all the way up into the city. Those are, you know, a lot of folks here live on these streets that are shown, and how much water is over there. So, you know, that berm will definitely help, as you can see on the left. So, go ahead. This is what it looks like, and then go ahead. And then we also, Larry's been doing a lot of work for the city, did a green infrastructure plan, so identified a bunch of vacant parcels that could be used for stormwater retention around the city, and this plan has actually already been created and established. Go ahead. The Hearn Building, a lot of you all I'm sure have heard about the Hearn Building downtown. I'm not going to get into the debate, but this is what the renderings are that we've gotten from the team that wants to actually go in and refurbish it. So this is what it would look like.
What is the target resident?
So it's a lower income building, so it goes all the way from 20% AMI all the way up to, I guess, 80%, I think. Yeah, so I think what'll happen.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, so average median income. So you look at your jurisdiction and you look at the household incomes and where you peg that average, and then for households that earn, say, 20% of that, they're very impoverished. They might qualify for an apartment there, but households that earn all the way up to 80% AMI, which is solidly workforce housing. That's like first-year police officer, first-year public school teacher. The cutoff usually at the federal level is 60% AMI, so affordable housing usually is 60% or less affordable housing. When you start getting higher than that, local jurisdictions start calling that workforce housing. So this goes up to 80% AMI. I think that's a pretty good.
So we did just pass that legislation that don't think I mentioned it. So it allows residential on the first floor. So, but you have to be back at least 30 to 50 feet. I think it's 30 to 70 feet is the way it was written. It was kind of written weird, but basically you have to be back at least 30 feet. So the shop front, still have to have commercial on your front on anywhere in downtown, basically. But behind that, you could have a residential unit, which allows, it's a big advantage to developers because, you know, they have to deal with handicap rules, which a lot of times requires an elevator to be put in if you're going onto the second floor. But if they can put a unit on the first floor, they don't have to do that. And so we just passed that, so that's a big coup. And I think when we can come back to the folks at the Hearn building and say, hey, we can give you a couple of advantages from a city point of view, can you in turn give us some things back? And, you know, then the discussion kind of begins. So anyway, that's what I've been told. So hopefully that'll work out. Go ahead. I think you missed one. Yeah, so this is the last one, I think. So this was the Jimmy and Sook's. This is actually the one this is the building that spurred and brought forward the request to have the residential unit on the first floor. So they'll have 7 condos on the second floor of Jimmy and Sook's, and then they'll have a first floor condo in the back on the first floor, and then there's going to be eventually a restaurant in front in that building. So that building is under redevelopment. I know it may not seem like it, but it is, and so that's great. Go ahead. And then I just showed some other, so when I mentioned that Dean and I are like big new urbanists, I showed some pictures of new urban neighborhoods that some really close up. So this is Daniel Island where I mentioned I lived, and like the garage here was required to be, I want to say 18 feet back from the front porch. So you don't really see the garage. You don't notice it really. It's not a big deal, but it is attached to the building. And so, you know, that's a big issue. Go ahead. And yeah, this was my old house. So this was alley fed. I know we have a lot of alleys in the city, and there's some debate about what should be done with those. I personally love alleys. I think we should try to restore them or do something to try to bring them back. But I know there may be some folks who don't agree. Go ahead. And I just want to show one more development in. So this is called Park Duval. It's sort of the opposite of what I showed. Some of the new urbanist neighborhoods that were high end, but this is a new urbanist neighborhood that's 1/3 market rate housing, 1/3 subsidized with home ownership, and then 1/3 subsidized with rental. And they've been able to make this work. It's been very successful. So you can design this way. It's in Louisville, Kentucky. Go ahead and you can just fly through these pictures. It just shows that there are townhouses, obviously. Go ahead. There's you know, duplexes and et cetera, and then go to, I think the last one's a single family home. But very nice architecture too, even though it's supposedly, I guess, what you would call lower income housing. Go ahead. And I wanted to just touch on these real quick. I know there's a few folks that are really involved in trying to get some transportation and traffic improvements in our city. We absolutely need them, and we need to try to figure out a way to do them. So I showed here just a lot of cities now are requiring an 8-foot buffer. I know that's hard in an older neighborhood to do that, but because of the root system, you know, with the sidewalks and so forth. Go ahead. So these are some examples of what you can do to kind of slow down traffic, you know, on your streets. I know someone mentioned a street earlier where you mentioned actually the speed limits, but still you don't want folks going 35 down to 25. You really want to try to get it so that they're going closer to the 25 miles an hour. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can attack that. I'm not going to go into each one. Go ahead. Here's some more, again, some ideas. Go ahead. So just the reason I put all that in, we're going out with Public Works tomorrow to go around the city and try to identify 5 sort of those quick and dirty projects that we can do and implement and see if we can actually improve the streetscape. And so there is a group together that's been working on this. There's money, it's funded, and so we just need to come up with the projects. So we are doing that tomorrow. And then this is our sign code from another city I worked in, but like, this is what our code should look like, so that when people open it, they're like, oh, I can do, that type of code or that type of sign, and that's very easy, and that's what it looks like, instead of having to read 16 paragraphs and you're not sure exactly what it says, so go ahead. And then this is our fences. We have this is a fencing code that we did somewhere else. Go ahead. Landscaping again, kind of the big box stores. It would be nice to get some trees out in the parking lots. Go ahead. And then finally, on a single family home, I'm a big believer that really the front yard is what matters. Maybe under the code, that's where you should have requirements for trees, but not the backyard. And so that's what this shows, basically, that the front yard is where there's a requirement for a certain number of trees to be planted. And then go ahead. Parking, we actually have a pretty progressive parking code right now, but it definitely needs some improvement, and we're working on that. But it is actually, we do set maximums instead of minimums, which is very unusual when you look at the whole country. The problem is when the maximums were set, they just flipped the minimums to maximums. And so like it might have said like for that Zaxby's that's coming in, that it could have what it used to say was a minimum of like, say 15 spaces, but now it says a maximum of 15 spaces. And so the developer is, and the way the code's written, there's no way for us to give them anything. So it's we're trying to fix that. So we'll definitely fix it. Go ahead. And I did go through the sort of the northwest area quadrant and take a bunch of pictures, and I can go through this very fast. These are signs. Go ahead. Some smaller signs, but we definitely need to clean up the neighborhood from a city point of view, not from a public. Not you all. The city needs to do a better job with its signage and things like that. Go ahead. Yeah, you can see some of these signs. I'm sure y'all are very familiar with these. I don't think that one's still there, but go ahead. So this is actually a good sign. On Boudeleaux and William Street, there's a little historic district sign. I think that the city should do that, and throughout the downtown to celebrate its historic districts. But then on the other side of the picture, you have a structure that's probably been there for gosh knows how long that should be removed. Go ahead. So I guess before I got here, a number of these signs were put in. And I would like to try to maybe limit the number of lighted signs, I guess, that we had. I'll just call them lighted signs, but they're there now, and so we can't do anything about it right now, but maybe in the future as we move forward, go ahead. And then we have some great stuff around the community, little book stands and things like that. Go ahead. And there are some great places, little alleyways and some fun places. Go ahead. And then when I showed you that original circle, that we try to use it from the planning point of view, this is what I was talking about. There's a funeral home, a church, a couple churches, corner store, a couple corner stores actually, all within that radius. So go ahead. And then again, there's some more. I may not be accurate on everything, but I know a lot of these are in that same radius. Go ahead. But the point is that those are mixed-use neighborhoods. They had multiple uses back in the day, and we should try to continue that. And then I talked about the architecture. We obviously have beautiful architecture within our city. Go ahead. And I did try to show some of the 2 to 3, 6 to 12 unit buildings that do exist. There's actually a cottage court down on the waterfront. And then I know that there's also the, kind of the mansion apartments that have the 3 units and so forth. So, and then the crazy flags. I'm not saying just in general, crazy flags. I don't want to get in trouble. So, we've got to be careful what we allow from a coding point or from a code enforcement point of view. Go ahead. And then, same thing. Just go ahead. And then lastly, and I know I'm probably showing somebody's house here. If I did, I apologize. So there are a couple things so this is where Dee and I get real specific. Like, so shutters really shouldn't be on a window unless they can close. Like, that's how a traditional house was.
Or even look like they can close.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied with that.
Yeah, so I know you can beat me over the head, but that's the way. And then the other thing is these little pork chops is a little thing on the corners. You can see it down there on the bottom left. I think they're there. But so traditionally you design those types of returns without the little sort of pork chop, I guess is the term that we come up with. But yeah, but anyway, these are fantastic homes. I don't want to, you're picking at little tiny details, and then go ahead. And then lastly, there's, some of y'all are familiar with where you live and, and so we do have a couple of comments. Go to the next one.
We asked that question.
And then, we've been working, again, we can't always put in pavement, but we can certainly get out there and strike the lines to try to tighten the street widths up and things like that. I was just trying to show, I've walked that neighborhood a million times and I took some pictures and then go to the next one and then I think we're almost done. So we do have people that are carving on the grass. That's not always the best thing. And then we have poles that just stick up with no signage on them. I'm not sure why that is. And fire hydrants that are literally like right in the middle of the sidewalk and signage is right. We actually have telephone poles right in the middle of the sidewalk. I've banged my head a couple of times.
Welcome to Cambridge.
Yeah, out there. Yeah, we need to fix all that. Go ahead and, I'm sorry, I guess I got a couple of things. Just driveways, I mentioned the alleyways are important, but also, people back in the day would just do, like the two strips, and we're fine with that. I mean, I think from a city point of view, as long as it's built correctly and then go to the next one. Last slide, I promise. So, just our planning commissions, our various commissions, planning commission, historic preservation and board of appeals, we need members and our council doesn't seem to want to appoint them. And so, we've had a couple people, come up. We want to get them. We want to just get people on those boards. We have 3 on the board of appeals. We need 5. Every time someone's out sick, we don't have a meeting. Historic preservation, I think we have 4 now, so we're a little bit better off. Planning commission's been solid. We're good. We have all 4. We have all 7. But yeah, just if you all know about it, anybody and that wants to be on a board or you want to be on a board, certainly submit your name and we'll try to get you on there. And I think that's the last one. So, yep, thanks.
Could you give timeline for when you want to have, when the temp plan will be completed or when you want to have it completed and that?
Yeah, so we have the charrette next week. It's that's sort of the biggest public input session. But we'll still continue to take input through, I'm going to just say like middle of October, just for a date, but I mean, I could be wrong a little bit. The state of Maryland requires the comp plan to go to the planning commission, and it's a pretty significant review period. And then we also have to send it off to the state to review it and then bring it back. So I'm hoping, we told the team that we would have it adopted completely by January of next year, basically. So
26?
Yeah, 2026, yes. Yes, so.
You've got 5 months to do it?
Yep, yeah, so, but I mean, this charrette is a huge deal. There's a ton of information.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. I'm serious. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, ultimately politics gets into the fray at times, but in other cities, we've been able to do that. And so I hope that we can do that here. We'll see. So I don't know. Planning Commission's a lot more involved in the sort of the review process here than in other cities, but otherwise, I think we can do it. We'll see. Hopefully.
Yeah,
We
I'm
gotta
just a little
we
concerned.
gotta calm this down and move on. We really appreciate Brian and Dean coming. Been very informative, and probably everybody has more questions. But we are limited in the amount of time we can do this. So I'd like to wrap it up. We'd like to thank you very much. And I think
Yeah, no, absolutely. Please come out. We definitely want to see you. So thank you all.